Hi, and welcome to Connections. I'm your host, April Healy. I'm here with my really good friend, Jenn Stockman, and she's the first-year director of Bethel Atlanta School's Supernatural Ministries, or BASSM, as we call it, because it's so much easier to say that. So, Jenn, welcome. Hi, I'm glad you're here with us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be back.
I'm so glad you're back. It's so great. Today, I'd love to talk to you about boundaries and needs and values and stuff like that. And so,
I love all that.
yeah. So, but first, will you tell us a little bit about how you grew up?
Yes, sure. I grew up in this tiny little mill-owned town, Scotia, and everyone had to be employed by the mill in some way to live in the town.
Yeah.
So it was a really tight-knit community. My dad worked at the mill, my grandpa worked at the mill. So there was town whistles that would go off every morning when they would go to work. It would go off at lunch, and the whistle would blow when they would come home.
That's awesome.
So I remember as a little girl crossing the bridge to my house, and my grandpa would be, Gramps, I called him, would be pulling logs out on the log pond, and I would stop and chat with him, and he would wave. So just really sweet. And I definitely grew up just loving the Lord from the time I can remember.
Wow.
I got saved when I was 9 and grew up in this little Baptist church that I just loved. I loved everything about going to church and belonging to Jesus. I remember I had this hot pink sweatshirt that said "Property of Jesus" in bold letters. And
When did you wear that?
I just wore it for years of my life.
Like from 9 on?
Probably from, no, once I got cool.
Okay,
you know,
got it.
that kind of phased out. Probably
Right.
like 9 to 10. I wore it for like a solid year.
Every night. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. So when did you learn about boundaries?
I learned about boundaries after marriage, and really started realizing I was in charge of my life. And took a while to realize I wasn't powerless, and I wasn't a victim, and I was actually in charge of creating a life I loved. And so boundaries became a super important process for me when I realized I'm in charge of creating the quality of life I want to live in. And it was a process of learning how to create a yes in my life that was protected with a bunch of no's.
Yeah.
And I think that was really the starting point of the journey of just learning the value of boundaries.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah.
So what would you say your top values are, where you found your yeses to be?
I've definitely found my yes to be, my greatest yes is, what is the Father asking me to do? And Jesus had all of these gifts and talents and demands on his life. And I love just studying the Gospels and seeing how he was constantly able to keep an anchored yes in, I'm going to be about my Father's business. I'm going to protect whatever my Father is asking me to do. I'm going to protect my ability to do that.
Yeah.
So my greatest yes has really been whittled down to, what are you asking of me in this season, Father? And I'm going to protect that with all of my life. And I just find myself constantly going back to, what is the Father saying? What is the Father asking of me? And boundaries help protect that in my life.
Yeah, that's really good. So practically, if I didn't have any boundaries and I was a person starting out with no boundaries, what would be some key practical things that you would help me get some boundaries in my life?
Yeah, I think knowing your why is the most important thing, because it's really hard if you've never had a value for saying no, and not feeling guilty for saying no, and not feeling shame. There has to be a why, a yes that's bigger than all those no's. And when you can whittle your life down to an overwhelming yes, the value for setting boundaries and living healthy becomes worth it. But without that why, it's an incredibly painful process to grow new muscle, to grow a new skill that you've never had before, especially if there's a fear of man. So having a yes, an overwhelming yes in your life just gives the pain in the process a value. Like Danny Silk has a great quote, vision gives pain a purpose. And so when we have a vision for our life that's bigger than the pain it costs to get us there, then there's just deeper meaning behind the growth that we're trying to cultivate in our life.
Wow. So how did you learn this, like year by year, practically, even in marriage, in having babies and parenting, in your own personal life where you were like, I had none and I was learning how to not do it through guilt, but do it through a large yes with the Lord, you know?
Yeah. Well, when I went to school of ministry, we ran a similar elective program that we run here in Atlanta. And I took Danny Silk's relationship electives literally every single step. So there was all these different choices, and I just kept retaking the same electives over and over because I had such an appetite and a hunger in this area to gain tools, to learn new communication strategies, to bump into, oh, this is what healthy looks like. And I also live with a man who is naturally strong in this area. He's naturally strong at telling the truth, communicating very straightforward. And so his strength has really been a massive example to me in just seeing him do life year after year after year. So once I learned skills and started having more than one tool in my tool belt, it was just a matter of practicing those and being courageous to learn to use my voice to protect what I was trying to grow.
That's really good. What would be some of the skills or tools that you got, like one or two of those?
So one or two would be, if something is bothering me on the inside, then I have a need. And so it's a self-awareness tool of learning that I have needs and they're worth addressing, they're worth looking at, and they're worth arranging my life to getting them met. And so probably growing in self-awareness was a huge tool that has really served me well in figuring out, oh, when I didn't speak up and something bothered me, that was my heart trying to give me good information that you actually need to say something. Or when I don't want to do something and I do it anyway without saying, hey, actually, I'm not available right then. The only person responsible for that is myself. And I just, probably that tool of realizing I'm in charge of my life and I'm in charge of creating the quality of my life was a massive revelation for me in realizing nobody can set a boundary for me. Nobody can protect what's important for me. And that switch from living powerless and living powerful was huge for me.
That's massive.
Yeah.
Thank you. What if your needs conflict with each other?
Like, can you give me an example?
Yeah. Or let's say you have a need to hang out with people because you miss your friendships, but you also have a need to have alone time.
Yeah. I think we, especially in changing seasons, our needs shift and change, and there's a plethora of them happening all the time. And we can't always meet them all in the same day, but I think the important thing for me has been creating a lifestyle of healthy needs getting met. And so just creating a rhythm for my life that I know I do well in has been the most important thing for just living healthy. So creating a flow of every week I connect with these friends. Every week I have this alone time built in. So even though it's not happening on a daily basis, I know, hey, this is coming on Thursday. I'm going to have a break to myself on this day at this time. And just everybody is so different, in learning yourself well enough that you can create a rhythm for your life where you really feel like I am reigning in life. This day was hard, but hard days are a part of living healthy. Hard days are a part of reigning in life. And if something's consistently not working, healthy people make adjustments and just keep making adjustments until we get into a rhythm that the best of me is consistently showing up.
So it's not finding perfection. It's finding stuff that works for you and realizing there are hard moments, but you're making them move toward continuous health.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Jenn. Like I said, you're full of brilliance every time I hang out with you and meet with you. And thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And you guys, thanks so much for listening. We love Jenn so much. She really is full of brilliance. And we love you, and we can't wait for you to come back next time.